Hello and welcome. I'm Liz Tassone. I'm volunteer host of the Caring Matters podcast, and I'm here today with Charles Locy. And Charles is a book author, and he wrote a book called What's in the Well Comes Up in the Bucket. So we're going to talk to him today about this book. And welcome, Charles.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, tell us first about where you got the idea for the title of the book.
The title of the book, What's in the Well Comes Up in the Bucket, is one of these expressions that I grew up with. You know, when your grandparents and people in the community would have these, I don't know, there's a name for it, colloquialisms, I guess is the name, but they would try to pronounce it, let alone write it. But that was an expression that I used to hear frequently, and what it meant was whatever's deep inside us will come up eventually in the way we talk or behave. Now, it lay dormant in me for a long time until I read a book called Personal Accountability by John Miller. And he made reference to that. And I read that and it just jumped off the page at me. And I thought, you know, I haven't heard this in years. And this was a couple years ago when I was going through this transformational process, Liz, where I was actually, you know, wandering in the wilderness and trying to figure out what life was about. And I started doing a lot of research. And I read that passage. And then I put it together, and then this book is the result of that.
Okay, so tell us a little bit how this book works. What the chapters are stories, or it's your own story, or?
Yeah, it's all my own story. I really it's a good book. It's a little bit of a biography. I talk about my life and things that happened to me, some people that came and went, and there are, like I say in the book, everything in the book is true, and some of it really happened. Okay, and I just talk about my life as a child and teenager and growing up and age of awareness and making mistakes and making the same mistakes over and over again and wondering why, getting angry, just having all kinds of issues, getting thrown in jail, just a number of things that happened to me. And as I look back at that, it's like, okay, those are all important pieces of my life that make me who I am today. Because without those challenges and without those problems, we never really develop. Okay, we all have stress, and we have to accept that as part of our journey. Mm-hmm. But it's how we deal with that stress that really tells the difference between who we are. We can allow stress to dominate us, or we can dominate the stress, and I prefer to dominate the stress.
Very good, which I think is why this book is appropriate for our caregiving audience, is because oftentimes caregivers complain that this is a very stressful situation that they're in. So can you talk to us a little bit about how your message might apply for caregivers?
Sure. As I said before, I grew up in a village, and when I was a kid, my parents got divorced and my aunt got divorced all about the same time. And so what ended up happening, there was 10 of us moved into this 3-bedroom house with 1 bath, and of course I didn't know what it was like to sleep alone until I got married. So there was a lot of stress there, okay, but eventually that filtered out. But one of the things about growing up on Lake Erie that you realize is that they used to have 150 years ago all these garages built along the ports, and inside the garages were rowboats, and the rowboats were designed to, when a ship was in distress on the Great Lakes, the people from the village would come out, get into the rowboat, and row out to rescue the people on the ship. And the slogan that they had was, you have to go out, but you don't have to come back. Wow. So, but in today's society, we have people that we have the same expectations of, and caregivers are certainly one of those groups, where they're in a situation that's very difficult, very challenging. They're dealing with, end-of-life issues. They're dealing with family issues. They're dealing with regulations. They're dealing with therapists and doctors, and they're dealing with administrators from your organization, and we're all trying to piece this together with the idea of providing quality of care. And sometimes care providers, really are walking into a hornet's nest when it comes to the work that they do. Mm-hmm. Because people may be uncooperative, they may not have had their medications or their blood sugar or whatever it is. And we expect them to go in there, and when they come out, we expect them to have done a quality job or a quality service for that person. And so what ends up happening is at the end of the day, they come home, they've been beat up, they've been yelled at, people have been uncooperative with them, or they spend too much time doing paperwork and not enough time with the patients. But they come home and they're frustrated, and sometimes they're angry. And the only thing I can say to them is, just relax, be patient, take a deep breath, take another deep breath. Think about your day and count your blessings, because there's a ton of them. The fact that you're here taking deep breaths means you survived the day, you're still here, you're still loved, and you have people that love you and need you. Secondly, learn to forgive these people. Okay, you think they're causing you stress. Okay, they're really not, because they're having bad days too sometimes. So learn to forgive these people, no matter what the transgression is. Get it over with now. And learn to forgive yourself. You come home, you're stressed, you're angry. Those are all forms of fear. And we really need to learn to manage that, learn the art of forgiveness, and really mean it. I think there's a passage in the Bible, or the Lord's Prayer, forgive those who trespassed against us. And there's meaning in that. And that came to me one day a couple of years ago, and I thought about what does that passage really mean. And it just means as long as we're living in an unforgiving atmosphere, we're not free. And the truth is, if you forgive, you will be set free. Because now you're emotionally able to move on with your life and get more things done.
Very good. I noticed, I looked up your book on Amazon, and I saw that one of the reviews said they're head high and heart open, and in regards to living out the message of your book. So I just would ask you to comment on what that might mean.
Over the weekend, I had a class reunion I went to, and some of these people I hadn't seen for 40 years. Oh, geez, I just gave it away. Okay. And I was talking to my mother-in-law about being nervous, about meeting people after 40 years. I said, after all, I don't know these people. And her answer to me was, as long as you know yourself, you'll be fine. So keep your head high and your heart open. As long as you know yourself, you're comfortable with yourself, it doesn't matter who walks in the room, it doesn't matter what you're doing, okay? You can just be authentic and just be yourself and just relax. Don't be nervous about anything. Because there's a good chance this other person is looking at you thinking the same thing. Does he remember me? Or I remember in the 8th grade I took his lunch money, or whatever it was, okay? And of course I forgave all those people. But that's what that means. Be focused, know who you are, what you're trying to do, forgive others, and just go through life following your passion. And your passions, you need to think of the analogy of like in the middle of the downtown Cincinnati, and it's the middle of the night, and you're waiting for your bus. That's Cincinnati, Ohio, by the way. And you're waiting for your bus. And the bus is coming, and it doesn't stop. It slows down, but it doesn't stop. You're going to chase after that bus. And my message to many people is, chase after your passions like it's the last bus in the night. Because if you don't catch that bus, you're going to miss a ton.
Very good.
Thank you.
And what I hear you saying is that caregivers in this role that can be highly stressful, that they can use this very experience of being a caregiver as a learning tool for some of the things you're talking about. That life doesn't have to be different in order to practice what you're saying, but use exactly what's going on in their lives right now to practice some of these principles.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is good, because a lot of times I think caregivers feel like, well, maybe I'll do this later on, or when things change, or when things settle down, but that day may not come, so they can incorporate your message.
Yes.
In this very moment.
Yes.
In this very circumstance of caregiving.
Yeah, you're right. We all are responsible for our own being. We truly are. And when we say things like, I'll do that when, okay, we're really not then pursuing that now. And if we think that's where our passion is, we should begin today moving in that direction, whatever that is, okay? And whether you're a caregiver or what you do or anything, understand that you may be doing this because it's a job, you may be doing this because it's a mission. It really doesn't matter, because the question is, why are you doing this? Is it to get you from point A to point B? And if that's the case, there's nothing wrong with that. You just go in and do an honest work with love and compassion in your heart, and it'll move you forward in whatever you're trying to do in your life. When people go into positions or jobs with bad attitudes, they end up getting washed out pretty quickly. Okay, and what ends up happening is the individual is hurt, and the person they're providing services for are hurt. And again, I'm not a job counselor, and I'm not a human resource person, but I just know that caregivers are under a tremendous amount of stress, and they need to every day reflect on the good work that they're doing, how they're helping people, and that this position is actually getting them spiritually and physically from one station in their life to another.
It's a great message for our caregivers. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
And Charles is going to be one of our speakers at Caring Matters Conference coming up here in Cincinnati, Ohio on Wednesday, September 14th. So you could also hear him live and in person if you attend that conference. And there's more information about that conference below this podcast. If you scroll down a bit, you'll find more information about that. I wanted to also thank our sponsors of this podcast. They help keep us rolling, and those are Vitas Hospice, Hillebrand Home Health, Home Care by Blackstone, Family Bridges Home Care, Lifespan, and Bailey. So you can always just press those with your mouse, press that, and it'll go right to their websites as well, and we thank them for their sponsorship. I'm Liz Tassone. I want to thank Charles for your participation today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great message for our caregivers. And always remember that caring matters.